Hey, what's up, my friend? So, welcome back to this week's market analysis, right? You might be wondering, hey, Rainer, where's your face, right? I can't see you, blah blah blah, right? And the reason is because I didn't on the webcam today, right? And the reason being is wasn't feeling too good over the last couple of days, right? Was down with a sore throat, cough, right? And didn't have time to do this video on the weekend because I was just simply resting. And it's already Monday today, and I didn't really want to take too long to do this video, because the markets are already moving. So, I try to, I want to get this out as quick as possible, right? So this week's video, I'll just keep it short and sharp, right? The market that I want to be talking about, right, is crude oil, because this is where I see the opportunity right now, right? So let me run you through, quickly what happened to crude oil, right? On the long-term chart, right? So if you recall, right, in 2014, 2015, right, crude oil basically had a massive collapse, right, all this year, right, on this chart, right? So if you tune into CNBC financial news, right, you'll be seeing crude oil mentioning almost every single day, right? So this is a trend followers paradise, right? So this is the crude oil collapse, and after which, right, it had a pretty steep rebound, right? Then it collapsed further, right? So right now, if you ask me, right, my bias from crude oil, right, is that the long term downside, I think it would have pretty much is over already, right? You can see that the market, based on this weekly time frame, you already see higher highs and higher lows. Okay, and if you ask me, right now, what's interesting is that if you recall, right, crude oil, I actually before I talk about my loss on crude oil, I want to share with you, what happened recently. So you see this crude oil, it went into a very long-term consolidation over here, and at this point in time, right, my thought is that it would go higher. Alright, but I don't deny the fact that it could also go lower, right? Because the longer it ranges, right, usually the harder it breaks, right? Because there will be stop orders, being clustered above the highs and below the lows. So what happened is that we had a breakdown over here, right? Price on the daily time frame basically broke down over here. Okay, so I'm sure, right, a lot of traders who got long basically got stopped out, right? Me included, right? I'm not sure if I shared this, right? But basically along the break, when price actually broke above this highs, right? When price traded higher, it pulled back, forming somewhat of a flag pattern, and then it broke the highs. I went long with a stop loss of 1 ATR below this low. It's a pretty darn wide stop loss, to be honest. It's like my entry is here and my stop loss is here, right? It's a pretty much a trend following trade, trying to ride the long-term trend, and I got stopped out when price came down lower and took me out. Right, so this was a loss I had on crude oil, right? But nonetheless, right, that loss aside, right, the next thing that I noticed right now is that this market has basically now closed back above this area of support, right? This area of support, right, once broken, it should act as resistance. It did test it once over here, and right now price has closed back above this area of support. If you ask me, this is key, because if you look at the weekly time frame, right, it basically just shows you that this is pretty much a false breakout of this area of support, right? And the weekly candle has now closed higher. So my bias right now is to go long on this crude oil. But since I don't trade off the weekly time frame, right? If I were to trade off the weekly time frame, I would go long over here. Stop loss, perhaps 1 ATR below this low, somewhere over here. But I don't trade off the weekly time frame, right? The stop loss is actually pretty large for me. So what I prefer to do is you can use multiple time frame analysis, right? And find an entry on the lower time frame. Right, on the 4-hour time frame is where I'll be looking at. Right, a possible setup that could happen is the market comes back down, retest this area of support, right, previous resistance, that could become support, and you look for an entry trigger and to go long on this market, crude oil, right? That's one I could think of right now. Another possible scenario is for crude oil to do a pullback, right? Someone like a flag pattern, right? Maybe it does not retest back this area of support and then continue trading higher. If that happened, right, I could possibly go long on the break of this high in anticipation of higher prices in crude oil. So now, depending, right, whether this is a trend following trade or is this a swing trade for you, right? So let's say if it's a swing trade for you, right, I would say possible targets that you can look for is for this highs over here. Okay, you don't want to try and aim for this absolute highs, because the market may not get there and you may encounter selling pressure and then the price reverse lower. So I would say give it some buffer, right? Be more conservative a bit. I would say anyway in this area, right, it's a good possible level to take your profits off the table from a swing trading perspective, right? If you're a trend follower, then you just simply trail your stop loss as the market goes in your favor. Okay, so this is the trade I'm looking at on crude oil, right? I would wait and see how this works out in the coming week, but I would say this is definitely one of the exciting opportunity that I'm looking at right now for crude oil. So now I just want to talk to you about a loss I had on crude oil, right? So basically you can see that this market broke above this highs over here, right? And at this point in time, right, on the weekly time frame, what it was showing is that the market looks something like this. So to me, right, I thought, this could be a moment where price break out of this range and, we could see, further upside. So to be honest, right, I didn't get the best of entry, right? In fact, I think my entry is pretty sloppish, right? I simply went long on the break of this highs. Stop loss 1 ATR below this low. And it's really very large, right, from a risk to reward standpoint, right? It's a very large stop loss I had. So if you ask me, right, I would say this is definitely a poor trade that I had, right? So price then came in, right? We had the false break of the highs and then it continued into a range, right? For a long period of time, you can see it went into a range for a long period of time. Then it collapsed, stopped me out, and finally, close up higher at this point over here. So this is a loss I had on crude oil. Not the best of entry. Not really a good trade if you ask me. Alright, so I think it's a good lesson learned. And on top of it, right, the breakout that I had wasn't really the nicest of breakout because, I didn't really have a build up that looks something like this, right? A tightening spring or coil. Rather, what I had is just the market coming straight into a swing high and then doing a failure test, a false break before closing lower over here. So it's a bad trade in my opinion, right? Reviewing back, I would say this is the type of trade that I shouldn't have taken, right? But I guess, the fear of missing out got the better of me, right? Because, I thought that the market, would go higher on the break of the weekly resistance, and I didn't want to miss the move. So yep, this was the trade that I took, and I had a loss on this crude oil. Alright, so nonetheless, right, this is what's going on right now in crude oil, and have a look at it and see if this makes sense to you. So that's all I have for you in this week's market analysis, right? As I've said, right, I'm keeping this short and sharp, right? Don't really want to push my voice too much, but if you have any comments, any feedback, just feel free to let me know in the comment section below, right? And with that, I wish you good luck and good trading. Talk to you soon.